Hi everyone, I'm so happy that you're here to join me for the Way of the Animal podcast. So on today's podcast, I have a guest speaker, Nicole, my kickboxing coach, who I've spoken about a few times in the podcast. Welcome, Nicole.
Thanks for having me. I'll try not to ruin it for you.
We're both a bit nervous about it. I don't know why, because it's just a conversation. But I wanted to get you on very early on in the podcast. I spoke to you about it. And
I think that was back in April, right? Yeah.
And it just, nothing aligned. And then that's just finally here. So that's obviously like divine timing. We're meant to do it now and not then, which is great because I think I'm more capable of speaking to you now than I was in April. I've got used to podcasting. But what drew me to you was, I forgot to say, you have this connection martial arts business. So you do your kickboxing coaching. And then you also do your social work. I can't remember what you said.
Social work is a good umbrella term to use. Specifically, I do mental health. I'm a mental health therapist, so there's lots of parts of social work.
And it's trauma-informed coaching as well that you do.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk a bit about it?
Yeah, totally. So trauma-informed practice is kind of like a certain framework that can be applied to lots of different disciplines, professions. It's distinct from trauma-specific work, where trauma-specific work is processing. It's sit-down talk-based therapy, it's EMDR, it's different things like that. Trauma-informed practice is more of a framework that you can apply to certain things to make it more accessible for folks whose nervous systems may have been impacted by trauma in their lives in whatever ways, or even just adversity in general. So there's the principles, depending on who you look at and what resources you look at, the principles vary differently, the words they use to describe them.
Yeah.
But they're basically, let's see if I can remember them, because whenever I try to remember lists, it's
I get
it all goes off my brain.
I get that.
But it's choice, it's empowerment, it's what is it? Choice, empowerment. There's the 5 basic ones. Look at me, only being able to remember 2 of them right now.
But you do it so naturally. That's what I really like about what you do is, and I spoke about it in the kickboxing podcast with Ulster, was that, there is the list and the defined terms and, sort of the framework that you use, but it comes so naturally to you, I think, especially with your social work training, all the training and learning that you've done, is that how you work with people and treat people and support people within your classes is amazing. And
thank you. That means a lot to me.
It's amazing because, there's so many different people coming with their own different baggage and struggles, and even just from one day to the next, they could be a different person. And no matter how I felt, you've always made me feel better, and it's amazing to feel that, because I don't think I've felt that within sort of a learning environment.
That really makes my heart warm. I'm glad that I'm glad that it's landing and that it's working for folks. So it's definitely like I said, it is a framework. So it's what we're doing is the same as it would be at another martial arts gym, but the how is different. So a lot of the things that we do or that I do, or even the physical built environment, I've put a lot of intention to, based on those trauma-informed principles. So in classes, I try to offer a lot of choice, going at your own pace, having kind of intentional check-ins and noticing and attuning to folks as they're coming in. There's a lot of things that I do that I don't say out loud that I'm doing it. Just in class to try to make to try to meet people where they're at. That's kind of the intention. So it's we're still learning kickboxing. We're still learning like the sport and all of those things, but the how we go about it might be a little bit different from other gyms.
Like, I've never been to another gym, but I definitely notice your approach and your attention.
And maybe that I'm just weird, because that is the thing. I am just weird.
But that's great, because so am I, so I feel like I fit in, you know?
Yep.
That's the nice thing, is like, I feel welcome in this space because of that, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You don't... It's like, it's not regimented, it's very organic in the way it's done, that you don't, like, a lot of people even notice all the things you're doing in the background to help, you know. I love that.
Well, that means a lot to me. And it's like the other martial arts is interesting. Kickboxing, MMA specifically, like if we look at modern martial arts as opposed to traditional martial arts, there's pros and cons to both. Depending on the coach or the instructor, you're gonna have like different approaches to both, because it is really instructor and coach dependent. That's a whole other issue. But traditional martial arts tend to come with like really built-in values and structures that works for some people and doesn't work for other people. Modern martial arts, like mixed martial arts, kickboxing, can tend to lean towards more like toxic environments if folks aren't really aware of those like red flags or those things that are kind of like accepted as normal in certain spaces that might not necessarily be like the most healthy or effective for people. And it's often not intentional. It's just for certain people it creates barriers to be able to actually like train safely. So I don't know how I got on that tangent.
No, it's good.
Something sparked there, but trying to circle it and tie it to the conversation.
How did you get into kickboxing then?
How did I?
Yeah.
How that is kind of a long meandering story, but kind of not at the same time. I have always been interested in martial arts and wanting to do it, but I didn't get a chance to until I was an adult. I grew up in a really small town in like northern BC. And there was like only, I don't even know if it was Hapkido or Taekwondo. I think it was like both.
Okay.
It was like very not well defined.
Yeah.
Because the instructor did both. And I wanted to do it, but my mom made me choose between soccer or that. And I had all my friends in soccer because I'd been doing that since I was like 3 years old. So I'm like, well, I don't want to like leave all my friends and then do this new thing that I don't know anybody. So I chose soccer instead. I would always circle back to like, hey, I want to do this. But then over time, my mom was like, she was a social worker in town, and she didn't really quite feel comfortable with me going and training with that instructor for whatever reason. Yeah. I asked her years later, and she's like, you know what? I actually didn't have a specific reason. I just didn't have a good feeling. Yeah.
Which I'm like, she was right. You know,
fair.
Following gut feelings.
Right? Exactly.
Who knows?
Yeah. So I never got into it when I was a kid, but when I moved away to university, I started karate actually, and it was like a program within my university in Montreal. I liked it. I liked the sparring that we did like once at the end. Okay. the program up till then was a lot of like sitting and meditating, which it does not quite work for me. I'm like very physical, very like, I wouldn't say hyperactive, but I need a lot of like, what is that, vestibular input to feel regulated. So when I am told to sit and told to breathe, I get very irritated and very dysregulated. So I really loved the movements. I loved the the concepts and the potential of what we were learning, but that environment that I was learning it in and the instructor's approach in that particular style of karate didn't quite work for me. So I did like my first couple of belt tests, and then I graduated, so I moved. So I came back here to do my master's, back to Prince George, and I started Taekwondo. And that I think my first day was a black belt sparring day.
Oh my goodness.
And I was like, oh my gosh, I love this. It was amazing, because that for me, that's what I really connect with, is that the sparring, the movement, the play, and the intensity with it. So I just like immediately fell in love and was like, I want to do this all the time.
Yeah.
I think I did in my first year like 4 or 5 tournaments.
Wow.
And some of them without a coach, because the club wasn't going, but I'm like, I'm gonna go. We were invited.
Brilliant. I love it.
Yeah. So I was a little bit of a keener. And after a while, like, I love Taekwondo, and I actually joined kickboxing to get better at Taekwondo, because I wanted to like compete at Worlds.
Yeah.
So Taekwondo is very kick heavy. They say that it's the way of the foot and the fist, but it's like mostly known for its kicks.
Okay.
So I knew my boxing was like a weak point, so I joined kickboxing to get to improve my boxing, because there was a program that was starting that was like a women's only kickboxing class, and I'm like, you know what, I'll just do it.
Yeah.
I have this goal, I want to go compete. I'm going to get my boxing better. And then I loved it. I was like, oh my gosh, this is so much better. Kickboxing is very different from Taekwondo. It's a higher intensity, it's a higher impact. So it just really clicked.
Yep.
It clicked for me in a way that Taekwondo didn't fully. I really liked Taekwondo, really liked the kicks, but the intensity that I was able to go at in kickboxing just felt so much better.
Yeah.
So I did both for a bit, and then eventually, just because Taekwondo was not quite meeting my needs, eventually switched over and went into more like full-time focused training in kickboxing. And that's kind of how I got to the kickboxing piece.
And then you've worked all your way up to actually coaching it.
Yeah.
Beyond that.
Yeah, that happened faster than I would have liked.
Okay.
I was like, when I started Taekwondo, I was like, you know what? I love this. I would like one day to have my own place. At the same time, I was doing my master's. I was working in the mental health field.
That's a lot.
Yeah. And well, I was like, you know, this like all fits together. It all fits together. It would be really cool one day to have my own place, and to be able to do things in a way that kind of align with my values and the things that I know are like evidence-based in terms of how they help people. Because I definitely saw a lot of things that were not necessarily helpful for people training.
Yeah.
And nothing against the instructors or anything like that. It's just they didn't have the training to be able to understand what was in front of them and what they were seeing. Yeah, they don't know.
They don't know.
That's not what their training was in. Yeah. So I'm like, there's a gap here. There's a gap here that would be cool to fill. And then there's stuff that happened kind of over time in the place that I was training kickboxing that was just like increasingly incongruent with my values.
Yeah.
So that became not sustainable to kind of be training in that environment.
Yep.
Hence why I opened my own place.
In your house first?
In my house, yeah, in my house. So it happened a lot faster than I thought it was going to, because my kickboxing coach moved. And then that kind of forced the decision.
Yeah.
That forced the decision at that point where either it was continue training in a place that I was like increasingly feeling was not congruent and not going to be helpful, helpful long term, or just do it. So I just did it and just started in my basement.
I love the bravery to just be like, I'm just going to do it. Like, I love that. It's just that determination, because I know where you are now. I mean, people can't see where you are now, and I'll describe it. But like, I've seen some of your previous Instagram and little videos from in your basement, and it's just like,
it was with the stairs from the back that like were death traps in the wintertime. That was fun. That was the year we had so much snow too. And I was also still working at my previous place of employment, so working there full time and then trying to run programs in the evening. It was fun. It was not a time that I would like want to do again, but like worth it to get where I am now. But it was definitely a lot.
It tends to be that way as well, like when you're transitioning from one idea to the next, and it's like you just have to work all those hours just to kind of get it figured out.
Just to make it work. Yeah. Because it's like tough starting something because you have to start somewhere.
Yes.
And then all these other things are kind of dependent on it. Yeah. But people laugh because people describe me as impulsive. But I laugh with my friends with this sometimes because I'm like, I'm not impulsive. I actually think about it a lot. I think about things a lot. I just do it a lot internally.
I was going to say, it's like that thing. I think my family thinks that as well, because I don't tell them a lot about what I'm thinking about doing. And then it's like, I'm kind of halfway through writing a book just now. And they're like, what? Where do you know? It's just like, I just want to sort it out myself.
Yeah, exactly. You do a lot of like that processing internally.
Yeah.
And then when it comes out or it like is shared, it shocks people sometimes because they're like, oh, what? But you've been doing so much that the internal build up to
they have no idea. It's not come out of nowhere. It's not impulsive. It's been there in your mind. Well, it was there from the start. It's just
exactly. It's just like it's now coming out and coming alive.
Yeah. And you moved into this space where we're recording. Was it December?
Yeah, it was last December.
Like last year, just literally 2023, and it's 2024 now. And I joined in March, I think, or March, something like that.
Yeah, I think, was it February?
I think it was February. Maybe February. Yeah.
Maybe like partway through February, I feel like. And then March was like your first full month.
Yeah. That sounds right.
Yeah. That's a long time now.
I know.
Oh my gosh.
I know.
Wait. How many? February, March, April, May, June, July, August, September.
Was it you said to Ulster, 6 months to get to was it for competition you were talking about or sparring? I can't remember, and I was like, nope.
Well, it's such a good example of like how people have their own pace, right? Their own pace and their own goals, right? So when people's goals are competition, sometimes they know that right from the get-go. So 6 months is like a time that I tell them, like, hey, let's check in where you are there.
It's like they have that drive as well. It's that drive to really just get it spot on all the time, really work at it.
Because the goal is different than somebody who might be doing it for like mental health or social connection or those things, right? The drive is different. Like the drive is different.
Honestly, I mean, I talk about it in the kickboxing one, but I had no idea what I was coming to. And my friend asked, and she was like, "You're going?" I was like, well, I don't have a reason not to, so let's give it a go." And the connection martial arts, like, because part of my business brand is connection, like, and so it was just like, yep, I can see why I'm here. And you got purple in your thing, purple, this whole thing. Yeah. But to begin with, I had no idea the effect it was having on me. You know, I just had no idea the greater effect, and I think a lot of people can't even pinpoint it, but know that something's happening when they go. Do you know what I mean?
Definitely. So many. Yeah, there's so many things. There's so many things that happen on the mats. That like it's hard to find words sometimes for it. Because there's like the social connection, the community that you're building. Like the strength in your own body and getting comfortable taking up space, and like there's so many different things. There's even like the my brain is going in like 2 different directions at once right now.
Go for it.
So I'm like,
take me one, take me to the other.
Which way? Because I was chuckling to myself last night when I was like cleaning the mats at the end of class, because I was actually listening to your kickboxing one.
Oh yeah.
Just to make sure I was like ready for today. And like, first of all, it made my heart so warm. I was like smiling to myself. I'm like, people are gonna look at me and think I'm a crazy person. I was like smiling and laughing to myself. Listening to this, and like a lot of the things that you and Alistair were talking about are so spot on, and like just so well said about what can happen in like environments, and how none of it is about fighting.
No,
None of it is really. And like one of the interesting things for me that maybe I can add to that conversation is pad work. And like what happens in pad work specifically is very interesting.
And do you want to describe pad work for people who have no idea what you're talking about?
Oh yeah, that's a good point. How do you describe pad work? So you strap pillows to yourself.
Specific like pads you have strapped to your
specific
hands.
Pads for your hands or for your forearms, depending if they're like focus mitts or tie pads, that you can use to practice combinations with a human without like your human getting hurt. And they are so fun to use because when you hit them and they crack, and you have that like connection with your training partner, and you are able to like sync up, like it's like such a cool feeling. And there's so many things that happen in pad work. And when you have a pad holder who's a little bit more like, who isn't learning, like isn't new beginner at pad holding, but knows it a little bit, and you're able to really just work on the pads, there's I don't know if you're familiar with the concept of bilateral stimulation.
So both sides of the brain?
Yeah. So it's like, it's a specific like technique, I guess you could say, that is used specifically in EMDR.
That's the eye movement.
Yeah, the eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. I always forget the acronym.
I always remember the eye movement bit.
The eye movement part. EMD, desensitization, reprocessing. That's what it is. So that's a trauma-specific therapy. And the eye movement part is one type of bilateral stimulation. There's different types. There's like tapping, hitting pads is one of them, right? Because you're crossing. So you are doing that on pads. The focus is not to reprocess trauma. Like you're not in a therapy session having that facilitated. But it's still happening.
It's working.
It's still happening.
It's like the physical process and then the subconscious or doing stuff that we have no idea what they're doing.
Body keeps the score, right? What is Bessel van der Kolk? That's a foundational seminal work now, I guess, because it's getting old now. Can't remember when that was published, but like trauma is stored in our bodies.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and like talk therapy is only going to get so much. Get at that so much. Hence why there's the more trauma specific ones like EMDR to help try to move that through. But physical movement and specifically pad work, I found can be very powerful in like adding to that. I had my like own experience when I was kickboxing. Didn't happen in Taekwondo because you don't train that way in Taekwondo. It's a lot more linear. So you're not doing a lot of crossing of the center. And I found that two things. One thing, if we just did bag work for the class, I'd be super dysregulated afterwards. And second is when I first started kickboxing, I had a lot of stuff coming up, like a lot of nightmares that were happening that I'm like, what the heck is happening? So a lot of stuff was coming up and like some realizations and connections that I made at that time in my life that I hadn't previously been able to. So that was very cool. Definitely not a fun experience.
No, not when you're sort of almost unsupported in a way, but you know, it's just like, oh.
Yeah.
If you're not aware why, or, you know, that can be quite scary.
Yeah, it was only afterwards that I was like, oh, that's what was happening.
Yeah.
Thankfully, I had a therapist at the time that I was working with. It actually opened up me to be able to work more effectively with her. And because I was not an easy.
No. Well, it's like the closed door, you're protecting yourself. Your subconscious is like, yeah, no, we're not sharing any of this. We're safe like this. We're not opening that door.
Yeah, definitely. That was like 100% me.
Yeah.
And armed with also being a therapist myself, I'm like, I know what you're doing, so I'm gonna.
You know the techniques that's coming. You're just like, yeah, no, that's not gonna work.
Yeah.
Try something else.
Exactly. But when I started kickboxing, I found myself, I was super raw, but also so much better able to process things in session, which was like a very interesting experience.
I just think how many people you're helping in that way, and like a lot of people, it won't be maybe as traumatic for them, but like I said, they're having this physical experience, they don't know how much it's actually helping them. And like, you know, I'm very aware of how I am and what's going on with me and what comes up, but I never find it that it's like sort of a traumatic processing, which is nice.
Yeah, that is nice. Yeah. And I wouldn't have described. No,
it's not traumatic. But you know, it's just like it's a bit shocking, isn't it? Though.
Yeah, it can be overwhelming for the system, for like your nervous system, if you're not expecting it.
Yeah.
Which is what I don't know if I did a consult with you because your friend brought you in. So often, like when it's a friend bringing somebody in, sometimes I waive the consultation because it's easier to come with a friend and have the. So it's always balancing the creating barriers, right? Yeah. So if people come with a friend, sometimes I don't do the individual consult, but generally before people come into the program, I do like a one-on-one kind of what I call consultation with people, where I'm just like, hey, this is the space, this is me, this is kind of my approach, and where like I tell them things like, don't be surprised if like stuff comes up, because it surprises you sometimes. When I train, I like kickboxing. It just like does something for my nervous system that nothing else does. But I also train jiu-jitsu. When jiu-jitsu is so much harder for my nervous system. Really pushes me outside my window of tolerance.
It's a lot of like physical contact. Is that kind of like, because I don't know, for me that
yes, it's a lot of physical contact. It's like being in holds, it's people being on top of you. It's like
very in your space.
Yes, it's very, very in your space. So when I first started training in jiu-jitsu, it was in my previous place where I already didn't necessarily feel super connected with the values and the approach that was being taken. So it was already like kind of stress responsey. If I can like make that a adjective, would that be an adjective describing word? Yeah, we'll go with that.
It's fine.
Yeah.
We get you.
And then it like I would go home crying at the end of class, like not in class. I would never let that come out on the mats in class in front of people, but like on the way home, I'm like chuckling to myself as I say that, because but on the way home, it would like, I would just like break down. I had no idea why. And I was a therapist. I had no idea why. I'm like, what is happening? But it's a lot of like the body held stuff, right? And then being in a space where you don't necessarily feel super regulated to begin with.
It's like you don't quite have the same support, super regulated.
Yeah. So that was interesting. But that connected to something. The consultations. Yeah.
Yes,
so I try to give people like warning that,
it's like a heads up.
Stuff can come up and sometimes you're not expecting it.
So I never had the heads up, but
Yeah.
I actually loved that voyage of discovery with it. So like I have struggles with social anxiety. So you know, coming here initially was so far out of my comfort zone.
I can imagine.
So it's like new people, and quite often it'd be different people every class. There'd be a few regulars, but it's different people every class. Obviously, you're always there. But it was just like and social, but I've got very good at masking it as well. So people have no idea that I'm struggling, or you probably see straight through it.
I was like, yeah, you're very anxious.
yeah. I seem to get louder when I'm anxious. I don't know.
Oh, I fully get that.
I think it's like I something the animals have taught me, because like you don't want to come off as anxious even though you are, and obviously they kind of sense it, but I've found a way to switch my energy where I don't seem like I am on the outside.
Yeah, no, it totally makes sense, because it's like that, the confidence in holding up space and not letting that anxiety shut you down, but you're still anxious.
Yeah. It's like that's just dealing with something for a very long time and knowing how to deal with it.
Yeah.
But and so initially, like, I was still working through that. So I wasn't really noticing anything else. And I draw great confidence from Alistair when I'm in an anxious situation. So when I started going with him in the evenings, it just that side of it wasn't as bad. And then I started to feel and notice other things. I was like, so
maybe less of your energy was going towards managing the anxiety, and you were able to start focusing on other things.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And it just allowed me to notice more. And it's certainly, no matter whatever kind of mess I feel like when I'm coming to class, I always feel a better person when I leave. You know, I just feel more centered with myself. And yeah, again, it makes my heart so warm to hear that, because that's like that's the space that like is my goal to facilitate. And I also don't want that to be the expectation, because sometimes things just suck, and it's like the feelings suck, and it's not gonna take it away or make it better. It's a good distraction, though.
Yeah, it is a good distraction.
You can't be in your head when you're learning to coordinate your body. And like showing up for yourself is like such an important thing. One of the first things that clicked for me in kickboxing that was different from any other martial art that I've tried is wrapping my hands as like a radical form of like self-care. So I've never had a great relationship with my body. Have done a lot to abuse it through exercise and through stuff like that, and taking care of myself as a way to get stronger has never been a thing that made sense to me. It was always like deprivation and punishment, and that kind of stuff was like how to get stronger. But then, like, when I could physically wrap my hands, protecting knuckles, protecting bones in your hand, protecting wrist, and then feel that direct impact of, I can punch harder, was like a radical reframe for me. Yeah. That was like a turning point for me that was very interesting. And I feel like there was something else that was connected to what you said that I lost in my brain. What did I lose? I have no idea.
We were talking about your journey and the social anxiety piece and focusing on the other things.
And you can't be in your head when you're...
You can't be in your head, yes. Yeah, so the like, something that I like to laugh about is like, there's different kinds of mindfulness, right? And mindfulness is often practiced in things like yoga or like that kind of stuff. That's commonly where people are used to hearing about those kind of like practices. But that form can be like very dysregulating for certain people. Like the breath can be very triggering for folks. So being able to be mindful through movement and through like more intense movement, but also more focused. Like you said, like when you're trying to coordinate, like it really brings you into your body, but in a way that is, I find at least not super dysregulating.
No, I think I honestly feel I've done a lot of learning of late about the nervous system, because it's one of the things that I've struggled with, especially with the dorsal vagal shutdown. You know, that's like one of my responses to trauma or any little thing, apparently.
Yep.
So, but yeah, I've really noticed with nervous system regulation, like that coming back into the body and out of the mind, like that just stops a lot of that, like instantly. It might go back. I might but it's just something about it is very sort of primal in its way of being, I think. Is
it's definitely a way to get back into your body that really works for some people. Like if I use yoga as kind of like a not contrary example, but
it's like a contrast. It's different.
Contrast is the word that I'm looking for. Is the purpose there is also to bring you into your body. But I find when I do yoga, I get so dysregulated. I can't get into my body because I'm like so much elsewhere. It's not enough. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's like that slowing down freaks you out. I'm putting words in your mouth, but no, it's a good
something
way.
like that. You know, it's like that.
That's a good way
feeling.
to describe it. Yeah, because like stillness for me does not like feel good. And
well, I'm going to interrupt you there. I keep thinking it's movement is your meditation.
Yes,
you know,
that's exactly it.
That's your meditation, and meditation is not about how it's done. It's about where you get to when you're doing it. If that makes sense, you know, it's how you are being and feeling in it rather than how you do it, I feel. And I think that's some of the struggle is it has become this sort of, you must sit cross-legged with your hands on your knees or whatever. And it's like, it's not about that. That's not about what it is. And going into your mindfulness, it's something that I talk about is, we're always so busy in our heads, and it's like mindfulness and your self-care with the wraps. I was thinking about it because we were holding a cup of tea here, is you can be mindful when you make yourself a cup of tea.
Yes.
And it's like, actually be present when you do it, and you'll put all that good energy and feeling into your cup of tea that you are concentrating on making a really nice, and it's like, that's a form of self-care, and that's slowing things down when you have to, because you have to stop and wait for the kettle. You know, it's like, it's just a little moment.
Exactly. And it doesn't even have to be like mindfulness is not about like good feelings. It's about being aware of what's coming up in the moment and attending to what's in the moment, whether that be like let's not label good or bad, like whether that be pleasant or unpleasant kind of
and then
feelings that might be coming up.
I love that, because I do that as well. Like your thoughts can be helpful or unhelpful, you know, and it's like, it's just what's going on with you. And I think a lot of people avoid awareness of how, like they don't feel good, but they don't search to find out why or what's going on. And I can understand that, because that's scary, but it means you can't really move through it in the same way.
Exactly. You kind of have to be aware and feel it and be mindful through it to be able to move through it. Otherwise, it's just avoidance. And avoidance is like shaking the pop bottle, or like if you think about
balloon
volcano,
holding balloon underwater. You know how hard it is.
Like the beach ball.
Yeah, the beach ball under the water, and you holding that underwater. It's really hard work. And then eventually it just goes poof in your face when you least expect it, and then it's really messy.
I use that metaphor a lot with like kids for the importance of like processing and talking about feelings. One of my kids was like, what about a flutterboard? And I'm like, oh, okay, so flutterboards go under the water. When they come up, they shoot out and they like break your nose. So it's like,
that's a real painful.
That's like, that's a way to level up that metaphor. But and the I think there's an unfortunate amount of shame that is kind of created around our talk about self-care and about like meditation, because it's like this is the one way that it's supposed to be, and it's very like disconnected from like what Lord Andre Lord, the person who kind of like first talked about self-care.
Okay.
It was like a radical political act of like it was a political act of like taking space and advocating for self, and it was like more community based. Now it's a lot more capitalist based.
Oh, okay.
It's like I've
not even thought of it like that. It's really interesting. I've not become aware of that, you know.
It's a very like it's a bit more of a kind of critical approach to how we talk about self-care now, because it's about like, okay, what things can you buy for yourself, and what all those
commercialization of self-care. Whereas as we spoke about, you know, wrapping your hands so you can perform better, so you can do what you're doing in a protected way, you know. It's like it's a bit of a different shift, and I think the same thing happens sometimes with like yoga and meditation. Like when we're talking about those things, it's like this is what meditation is. If you can't do this, then like there's something wrong with you. That is, as a mental health therapist, what I was kind of like, how I always felt. I'm like, okay, I can't do this. I hate breathing techniques. I feel super dysregulated with yoga, but this is what people always say to do and what people always say to recommend. So I always felt like some part of me was like broken. And then my therapist I was like processing this with my therapist once, and she was like, Nicole, you are allowed to not like yoga. Yeah.
And I'm like, what? Like that was just like such a radical shift for me that I'm like, oh, okay. Like I don't have to find this thing helpful, because it's kind of like, oh, you don't find it helpful, so you should do it. Because,
until you do.
Yeah. And I'm like, well, why? Like, to a certain extent, I understand.
Yeah.
It's like, but what is the intention behind it? Is the intention, am I avoiding it because it's bringing up, like, uncomfortable feelings and I'm avoiding it for something that I haven't processed? I don't know.
Yeah.
But, like, regardless, it doesn't feel good.
Yeah.
I don't have to do it.
Yeah.
I could...
And you found your other movement that helps you. Ironically... I love, there's a yoga teacher on YouTube called Adrienne, but her... Oh,
yes, I've heard about her.
Her thing is find what feels good.
Yes.
And it's like, so out with yoga, find what feels good, you know? And that makes you feel better and helps you in some way or another. And you'll find what is good for you.
Yeah, definitely. And it's going to be different for different people.
Oh, yeah.
And, like, that's okay. It doesn't have to look one way.
Well, we're all different, you know. How are we ever going to... There's never one answer, you know?
Yeah, definitely. That went through a whole slew of, like, self-discovery for me as well. Because I'm like, okay. It's okay for me to not like yoga. I like kickboxing. I like being really intense with kickboxing. I like then finding like what actually feels good in my body, because I was never in my body growing up. Never. And then so being in it now is very interesting. And being in a way that it actually like feels powerful and I can like feel powerful in it is interesting. And like there's so much going on. There's so much going on the mats that like lots of people, again, it's not about fighting. Although I really do like fighting. Like sparring as a whole.
I forget
is a whole other thing.
that's what we're doing. You know, it's so many times that you're like, and now we can do some conditioning, you know, so you could take some hits and some kicks. I'm like, oh this is
why we're doing it.
It's like Alistair's watching all these YouTube fights, and he was watching the Glory fights and things like that, and I just like I haven't looked at those. So he's sort of getting an idea for the moves from seeing those, and I'm just enjoying just learning something and not really realizing the next connection that it could be, you know.
But that's also why I was very intentional in how I made classes. lots of places they'll just have sparring in regular classes. Like the last place I trained, we probably sparred every class. Regardless of if you do this stuff or not. I love that because I love sparring all the time.
I think so. But I think I could get into it. Like I feel like once I've got over the nervousness of doing something like that it would change my perspective of like when you're teaching us a combination of punches and kicks and stuff, and really getting to the understanding of the application of it, because I'm still looking at the pads, but I'm not actually thinking that this would hit them here. It's like
it adds another level of like fun to it and strategy, because then it becomes a lot of strategy. And you're reading people as well. Like there's a whole, and I expect you're very good at that, being in the training that you've done. Like, my reaction time is questionable.
But I bet like inside your head, you're like, yeah, that's that. Oh no, I need to do something.
And well, like to put a bit of a reframe on that as well. Like I actually struggle a lot with coordination and movement.
You don't seem like, because oh my god, I thought I do. There's no way you do.
It's because I practice the movements so much. I don't know if you've like heard in class, because I mentioned it sometimes, but I was diagnosed autistic as an adult, so coordination and movement is just it's a little bit more challenging for me. Sometimes reacting to things and reading things is a little bit more challenging. So that's like a peek behind the screen of like, you don't have to be perfect. You don't have to be like you don't have to be good at the sport to enjoy it and to get fulfillment from it. For me, like I said, it's I was it over 6 months we're just talking about, and obviously it's about the sport, but it's not about the sport. It's about everything else around it. And then I feel like I'm getting more confident, and I would probably will end up doing more with it, but it's so much more than that. And going back to like the classes, that's kind of why I split the classes how I have, in terms of like we have a sparring specific class. So people can sign up for that when they feel ready, and if they feel ready and if they want to. Because not everybody wants to spar. For some folks, just the strength and the conditioning and the techniques on like pads or on the bag, that is enough for them. That is their relationship with the sport. And that is completely valid. Other folks want to try sparring and want to apply it in different ways. Not everybody wants to compete. Not everybody's going to compete, and you don't have to like be a combat sport athlete. But there is like a progression and I try to do like more of a gradual introduction for folks, rather than being like, here is sparring, go do it.
And I like that. Being where I've come from, like I like that.
Because it's like we talk a lot about the nervous system, and I use like the window of tolerance a lot, if you're familiar with that.
I've heard about it.
I'm forgetting his name right now. Who is it? who forms that? Oh no, not Vanderkolk. It's the other guy.
I'm never good with names. Don't worry about it.
I'll remember probably tonight.
I'll get a message.
I'm like, this is the name. This is the name. Actually, I might have is it Siegel? Oh, it's Dan Siegel. I believe it's Dan Siegel. I could be wrong about that, but I think it's Dan Siegel. I looked at the book on my shelf. And window of tolerance is like, below it is like shut down. Above it is like hyperarousal. That's like anxiety, panic attacks, losing control kind of presentations. Within that is kind of where you want to be for like learning and regulation. And sparring can push people so quickly outside of the window of tolerance because there's so many things happening. So like gradually introducing piece by piece, building folks' confidence with that, like slowly reframing, because a lot of people come in and they think kickboxing, they think sparring, they think violence. So slowly reframing that to be like, no, this is playful. This is all consent based. And you have control over if you do it, if you don't. If you're in a round and you're like, I'm done, we have a way for you to like communicate that immediately. Like there's all of these things that you build up over time so you can stay within your window of tolerance. Or at least close enough, because it's okay to go outside of that. It's just learning to recognize
when you are, and then attending to that need, because you don't want to spar when you're outside of your window of tolerance. Nope.
That's when you're gonna get hurt or somebody else is gonna get hurt.
That's getting messy.
That's where you see like if you don't watch a lot of videos, you might not have seen it, but just the wild stuff that happens that people post on, not necessarily professional fights, but like just amateur stuff that people post from like they're training at the gym, and it's like very obviously not controlled, and they are trying to take each other's head off. Not healthy. Not a great
and that's
way.
not what the sport's about either.
Exactly.
Like it's all about control, you know. And regulation and
taking care of your training partner and like helping each other train. Like you're not enemies. You're not opponents. You are on the same team. So it would be very fun to have you and Alistair in sparring.
You just want me because I'm the same sort of height as you.
Cannot confirm nor deny. But that might play a role. A little bit. It's very fun having people my height to spar.
Yeah, I bet.
Sparring anybody over 5'5" is annoying.
Yeah. It's a little bit harder. I mean, like, I've never done it, but even just, like, with pad holders and things like that, there's all different angles and your legs got to go higher. But I was saying that, I was like, oh, Alistair, I can kick you in the head now, which is awful. But to begin with, I couldn't get my hips open. I could barely get them very high. And now I can see I can kick up to the height of Alistair's head.
That's very cool. And, like, not awful at all. Because, like, we have, again, the association with violence.
Yeah,
right?
Well, my family's like, you're doing kickboxing, because they know who I am as a person. It's like, yeah, but it's not violence. That's the amazing thing. Is like martial arts always kind of scared me, because I think I just seen a lot of the competitions where they're really intense. You know, I'm not seeing training. You're just seeing the intense end of it, where they really are trying to win a competition. So
and those are full contact fights. So they are trying to knock each other out.
Yeah. Whereas, you know, it's not violent. It's about control, regulation. It's like almost like a bit of a dance. Yeah.
A dance is a really good way to say it. Like I also describe it as like a playful game of tag.
Yeah.
Sometimes less violence than a game of tag, actually.
This is true.
Tag can get wild. I don't let adults play tag because
I'm surprised you let the kids play tag.
They bounce.
Oh, okay.
Every time in the past where I have like been in training environments and the instructor has been like, "Hey, let's play tag as adults," somebody has got horrifically injured. But it's because like you're not controlled.
And you just it's like you lose that form of concentration. You just go wild almost, isn't it?
It's kind of funny. But yes,
you return to your childhood, but you're not as bouncy, like you said.
Exactly. You try to do the same things that you could do when you were a kid, and it doesn't work as well. But so like being able to like kick somebody in the head is like, that's a proud, like, skill-based thing. Like, I can do that. That is a cool thing.
I love that because it's so measurable in my fitness terms and my hips and hips. Like, we're talking about storing things, you know, trauma and emotions just get really caught in your hips.
So for a lot of people, they do.
For me to be able to, because I've always had stiff hips, sore hips. I've got booted by a horse in the hip, you know. There's been, like... physical traumas as well. So, you know, to be able to open up my hip and kick that high is like, oh, it's exciting.
That is super exciting. It's very, very cool. And something like to be proud of, right? Like we have on our sweaters, like we make friends by kicking each other in the head. Like it's legit. It's like it's nowhere else will you be like, you see this more in sparring, but when you get like punched in the face, you get excited and happy for the other person.
Oh, great!
Like, that was great. Like, you landed that nicely.
Yeah.
And again, still controlled, right? So you're not, like, we never go hard to the head because we're always taking safety around, like, head health concussions and all that stuff.
Absolutely.
But, like, you know when something lands nicely. And, like, when it lands, like, controlled and it goes, pop, it's like you get excited for the other person, and it's like
holding
so
pads as well. Like, you know, you feel the right feel of it. You're like, oh, that was good. That
feels satisfying.
Yeah,
and like you get excited for your training partner about like that felt good. That was strong.
It's a community spirit within it. You know, we're all helping each other and
exactly.
Cheering for each other. I was trying to think of the word.
Cheering for each other, is a good way to put it. I always say it's like it's an individual sport, but it's in a team environment.
Yeah.
And you have like there's like a saying about that, I can't remember right now. Something about you enter. Maybe that's a quote in a different context, but it's like entering you're in the ring alone, but like you're not alone, something. There's a quote there, but it might actually be from a different context and referring to something else. So I'm just gonna leave that. Welcome to my brain.
I'll just leave it in as well. I'm not editing out. I don't actually edit much with podcasts because I like them to be as they are, like because it's such a natural flow. And in that note, I really appreciate you coming on. Like,
my pleasure.
I knew we'd have a great conversation, and I really enjoyed it.
Hopefully it was like what you were hoping for and actually works for you. And there's
what I was hoping for was to have a good conversation, and that's what I feel like I've had.
Okay, cool. I feel like I can get like very rambly about this stuff because there's so much stuff.
Well, it's the passion. That's what I like. That's why you're great to talk to about it. You have the passion behind it, you know, and then all the learning that you have that you can share.
But sometimes not the organized thoughts.
Yeah, but who needs organisation? The chaos is fun.
Oh, we'll go with that. We're going to go with that. We'll go with...
Yeah.
The chaos is fun. Sometimes it's not super effective.
No, it's not useful either. Sometimes it's just like, could we just be less chaotic so we can... But I do the same. I'm like, that quote or that meme and I just blanks. I know it, but I just a blank, so it happens to me. Yeah. It's clearly not that important. It's more the message behind it.
Yeah, the intent. Some people have brains for like specific quotes and specific like pieces of information. Some people have brains for more like impressions. Yeah. Like I remember impressions of things. Yeah.
It's like mine's like feeling, impression, intent. I'm sure that's a really good point. Like I've never seen it as that before because I get really annoyed at myself and obviously I'm learning to not be annoyed at myself about it, but when I can't remember things
it's annoying because you're like there's this really good thing I can't remember it. And just know that it's cool. I can't tell stories. I can't like tell jokes or anything because I'm like it was funny, trust me. Like that's how
there was this really funny thing. It was great. It was funny.
That's exactly me telling a joke. And
that's kind of me. Yeah, you remember more important stuff though, so that's I'm sure.
Yeah, we'll go with that. Hopefully.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, my pleasure.